How do you outpace inflation through home buying? You'll want to stick around and watch.
This is Kasama Lee, your community realtor.
Doesn't it feel like things are just more expensive now than, say, 6 months ago? For example, if you buy eggs, you would know this. The cost of eggs, a dozen of eggs, 18 eggs, whatever, they're so much more expensive now. And I believe at one point they doubled in price. Yes, the cost of eggs. So imagine about everything else that we spend money on has also gone up. That, my friends, is what we call inflation. So with inflation going up, how do you outpace inflation? That's what we're going to talk about today. If you find this type of content valuable, you want to hit subscribe and the bell notification so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for supporting the channel, for sharing it, for liking it, for commenting on it, so that the channel could continue to grow and serve more people. So by the end of this video, you will have an idea of how you can actually outpace inflation through home buying. The first point I want to make is this. When you are borrowing money, when you apply for a mortgage to buy a house, you are typically in a fixed mortgage rate, a 30-year fixed. It may be a temporary buy down, what have you, but you know what you're getting into. You have control over what the interest rate you're getting into. So let's say now, if you are in an interest rate of 6.5%, guess what? If you don't refinance out, 10 years from now, that is still going to be your interest rate. What you don't have control over, none of us has control over, is the inflation rate. And inflation has inched back up a little bit in the last couple of months. So with that, the only way to really outpace inflation is that you have to lock down on how you're spending money in terms of your housing costs. And the only way to do that is if you're buying, you are locking in at the best case scenario, 30 years of interest rate. You can't do that when you're renting, right? Which takes me to point number 2. Here's a chart that you will see that the rate of rent increase actually outpaces the inflation rate. What that means to you, if you're renting, is this. When you continue to rent, I have never heard of rent going down, have you? It typically goes up because of inflation, because over the years the rent would go up, right? Actually written into the landlord has the right to increase rental rate. So with that, when rent goes up, a lot of times what really happens is the landlord who owns the home, who makes the mortgage payment, typically at a fixed mortgage rate, but because of inflation, they increase the rent to help cover whatever miscellaneous costs they may have. You, if you are renting, you don't have a choice. You either move out, and hopefully you'll be able to find a replacement rental property where you can actually afford or find it a lower rental rate, but chances are you might be moving down. So you might be moving to a smaller home, or there's some compromises that you may have to make, right? So when the landlord notifies you and says, we're raising the rent, you have a choice as a tenant. You either agree to go with the higher rental rate, or you give notice and you move out. And then now you have to scramble and find a different place to rent where it falls within your affordability. The important thing you want to remember is that home prices usually would outpace inflation. And there's a chart here that you can see. This I know, having been in real estate for over 2 decades. If you buy a property and if you held it for at least 5 years, you typically would see the appreciation in value and the rate of increase in appreciation of owning a home typically over the long term will outpace the rate of inflation. The bottom line is this. You will always know what your mortgage payments would be, especially when it's at a fixed cost. What you and I don't have control over is what the inflation rate will do. So the question I will leave with you is, how will making a decision to commit to a fixed monthly housing payment affect your current budget and your future budget today? Are you willing to commit to get yourself in a position to purchase a home so that you at least have one area in your life where you have control, which is your housing expense, which is, by the way, the largest monthly expenses that most families would ever go through. Ponder on that. Talk to your loved ones. I would love to hear your comment below or send us an email at kasamasales.com. Thanks for watching.